The Los Angeles County Museum of Art, better known as LACMA, is one of the most famous art museums in the United States. They once ran a contest in a newspaper, providing a prize to the person that gave the best answer to the following question. Here's the question. If a fire broke out at LACMA, if a fire broke out at this museum and you could only save one painting, which painting would you save? Well, a young college student won the prize with this reply. I would save whichever painting is closest to the exit. Well, that's not quite the type of courage I want to speak about today. Today, I'm speaking about the courage we need moving into this new school year. A year unlike any other we have seen in modern history. Let's face it, folks, our world will probably never be the same. And like it or not, this is our new normal. See, I'm supposed to be there in Dinuba with you in person this week. But the reason why I am not is the same reason this school year will be completely different. A little thing called COVID-19. The coronavirus has changed everything, from our ability to travel, to the way we shop, to the way we interact with family and friends. Zoom, Google Teams, WebEx, we're doing this on Zoom and our training this week on Zoom. It's changed everything from the way we work to the way we dress. I mean, whoever thought that the face mask would become an essential part of our daily wardrobe? And coronavirus has even changed the way we teach. What makes matters worse is that we have been bombarded with so much misinformation and even contradictory information from the very beginning of this virus. Things like, masks are effective until they're not effective. This virus is airborne until, of course, we're unsure whether or not it is. It's safe to go outside until, of course, it isn't. And with all of this uncertainty comes very real fear. And with that fear also comes very real trauma. Many of us right now fear for our health and the health of our loved ones in ways that we never thought we would before. COVID-19 has left millions without jobs. It has sent billions into isolation and forced nearly everyone on earth to grapple with the feeling that they, or the ones that they love, are now suddenly physically vulnerable to this virus. Some of us and some of the people who are close to us have even lost loved ones. We know people who have lost their jobs, they've lost their businesses, and they're nostalgic for a time when we could simply live our lives normally without this new strain that COVID has caused in our daily life. We're also fearful of this new normal of distance learning. I mean, let's face it, distance learning is challenging and it can be less engaging for both educators and students. Distance learning is certainly less interactive, which can make the already challenging career of being an educator all the more challenging. And on top of all of those very real fears is the fear that there is more change to come. Change is already difficult for most of us to embrace, but knowing that there is more change, and that change is nearly impossible to predict, I mean, that creates stress, strain, strife, and even more fear. Our world has already changed significantly, and there seems to be no limit to the amount of change and disruption and upheaval that we can expect. And yet, this is also an exciting time to be an educator. Yes, you heard that right. This is, with all the stuff that's going on, an exciting time to be an educator for this simple reason. Listen closely. In challenging times, People do not care about your title or your position. In challenging times, people follow courage. Courage. The children of Dinuba and their families are not only looking for courageous educators, they're looking for those educators who can also inspire that same courage in them. Whether you are classified or in the classroom, the children of Dinuba and their families are looking for courageous educators, and they're looking for those educators who can inspire that same courage within them. And that's where you come in. Yes, COVID-19 is scary. Yes, COVID-19 has changed our world. Yes, COVID-19 has turned the teaching profession upside down. But today, you will be reminded of your own greatness. You have been called. You have been destined. You have been created to be an educator for such a time as this. My all-time favorite definition of a friend is as follows, and I've shared this with people for many years. A friend is one who knows the song in your heart and sings it back to you whenever you have forgotten the lyrics. So today, you're going to hear once again the song that you already know, and the lyrics are 4 simple words. You can do this. You can do this. COVID-19 may in fact be the biggest challenge we have all faced thus far, but also remember your track record of having faced down giants before. We faced impossible odds before, and we're still here, right? You've done it before. Don't doubt yourself this time around. I'll repeat it because repetition is the parent of pedagogy. The lyrics to your song are 4 simple words. You can do this. As you daily meet the challenge to be your naturally courageous self, you are forever impacting the lives of children. You, and only you, can do this for the children of Dinuba. Today, you're going to leave with tools to sing your song once again. You will rediscover the superhero within you. You will face your fears head on and overcome them, and you will rise to the occasion and be the courageous educator that deep down inside you already know yourself to be. Take some notes, pay close attention, fasten your seatbelts. It's about to be a fun ride. This process is going to come to you in the form of 5 quick facts about courage, and then 5 practical ways to face your fears. Again, this is a journey we're about to take together. You're going to be given 5 quick facts about courage and 5 practical ways to face your fears, even in the midst of a COVID-19 world. Everybody ready? Ready to take some notes? If you're ready, say, bring it on, Derek. That was not nearly loud enough and not energetic enough. You can do this. Come on. If you're ready to be armed with the courage you need to overcome your fears this year, yell it to me, shout it to me. Bring it on, Derek. There we go. 5 quick facts about courage for those of you taking notes. Quick fact number 1, please write this down. Courage is a choice. Quick fact number 1, courage is a choice. Each day, we choose to be courageous. I want you to think of courage. I want you to think of courage as a door. Think of courage as a door with no handle on the outside. The only handle on this door is inside, and only you can access it. You have to open the courage door yourself. Courage is not something that is given to you. Hear me. Courage is not something that is given to you. Courage is a conscious choice you make. Speaking of superheroes, Christopher Reeve, anybody remember that name? Christopher Reeve? He played Superman on the big screen several times. Christopher Reeve said this, and I love this quote. Christopher Reeve said, either you decide to stay in the shallow end of the pool, or you go out into the ocean. I want you to repeat this after me. You may feel silly doing it, but I want you to repeat this after me. Since courage is a choice, please repeat this after me. Today, come on, say it louder and with more feeling. Today, right now, I choose to be courageous. That is the first step in this process. Courage comes after I acknowledge that I have to make a courageous, a conscious decision to face whatever comes my way with courage. Courage is not something that's given to you. Courage is a decision you make. Today and with this school year, I decide, I choose to be courageous. That's quick fact number one. Quick fact number two. Quick fact number two about courage, for those of you taking notes. Principles and values are the foundations of courage. Not only is courage a choice, but secondly, principles, my values are the foundations of that courage. See, this is the fact, listen closely please, this is the fact that will keep you from giving up when times get tough. And trust me, times are going to get tough. They're already tough. But this is the fact, this second quick fact about courage is the fact that will keep you from quitting. Here it is. We can only be courageous when we become clear about what our foundational beliefs are. We can be courageous only when we become clear about what our foundational beliefs are. In other words, if you're ever tempted to quit this school year, if you're tempted to quit, if you're tempted to succumb to your fears, you have to remind yourself of what it is you truly believe that led you to choose education as a profession in the first place. I spoke to some burned out teachers recently. I was doing an in-service, just like I'll be doing with you on Wednesday. I was doing an in-service with a school district down south recently, and they were talking about, I was letting them talk and vent some of their complaints about the school district, and they were talking about the low pay, which is a reality. I'm a retired educator. Trust me, I understand. They were talking about the low pay. They were talking about parents who are impossible to please. They were talking about administrators who don't really seem to care. I'm sure those are not issues you have in Dinuba, but those were issues they were having down south in this school district. And as they were talking and complaining and venting, and I let them talk and complain and vent because I understand sometimes teaching and educating is a thankless job. But once they got done venting, I asked them this question. I said, can somebody tell me what it was that made you choose education as a profession? I mean, I know that you knew when you got into this profession that the hours were long, the pay was not great. I know you knew that, but there's something that made you decide to be an educator anyway. What was that? And all around the room, they started sharing one by one about the reasons why they got into education. They talked about the fact that I grew up poor in a bad school, and I understand the value of education. Or some of them said, my parents were immigrants. I remember one person said, my parents and my grandparents were immigrants from Mexico. And they came over here and sacrificed so much so that I could have an opportunity to be the best that I could be. They sacrificed so that I could have an education. They drilled into me the importance of education. And all around the room, they started sharing, all of these teachers who had just been complaining about low pay and long hours, started sharing the reasons why they got into the teaching profession, or the reasons why they got into education in the district, or to become secretaries in the first place. And no joke, by the time they were done, there was not a dry eye in the place. What happened was simply they reconnected with what got them into education in the first place. Listen, for me, it is what was drilled into me in the teacher education program when I was getting my bachelor's degree. My teachers, my professors drilled this into us. This is the reason why I got into education. Now, you have to find your own reason, but here was the reason why for me. Every child can learn. Every child needs encouragement, and every child deserves respect. That was why I made the choice. You have to find yours. You have to find your principles. What is it that got you into this profession, this sometimes thankless profession, this sometimes underpaid profession? Find yours and remind yourself of it regularly. Okay? Quick fact number 3, for those of you taking notes. Quick fact number 3, Courage is not the absence of fear. To be courageous does not mean to never have fear. Courage is moving forward despite our fears. Knowing, watch this, knowing that there may be some failures during the process. And that's very important. There are going to be some failures. You have got to understand that this won't be all home runs this year with this new reality. You're not going to knock it out of the park all the time. It won't be all hits. There will be some misses along the way. There will be some problems, some bumps, some straight up failures along the way, as is always the case whenever we're doing something new and different. Courage is knowing that there's the possibility to fall and fail and mess up, and yet moving forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is knowing that there's fear and the possibility of failure and moving forward anyway. And remembering quick fact number 2 will help you to do quick fact number 3. Remembering that one will help you to do this one. Remembering why you got into this profession in the first place will help you when times get tough. Quick fact number 4. Everybody ready? Quick fact number 4. Quick fact about courage. What we focus on expands. What we focus on expands. The best way I can illustrate this to you is by telling you a story of a good friend of mine. Good friend of mine named John Thompson. John Thompson is a retired NASCAR driver, and he lives in, is it Chattanooga? Yeah, he lives down south in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Well, one time I was visiting John. Now keep in mind, he is a retired NASCAR driver. One time I was down south, I was speaking in Chattanooga, and I knew my friend was there, so I decided to talk to him, and we ended up having dinner. So we were at his house, and I was watching, he was showing me a video of one of his previous NASCAR races. And I noticed on this video, I was watching John's car, I was watching the video, I was watching him drive, and I noticed that his car almost spun out of control, and it was headed toward a wall. John was headed full speed toward the wall, but I noticed at the very last second, he was able to turn his car away from the wall and get back onto the track and get back into the game. Now, I'm not a stock car racer, so instantly my curiosity was piqued. I leaned over to my friend and said, John, man, tell me what, I saw you headed toward the wall. Tell me what happened. How did you avoid crashing into the wall? He said, Derek, it's very simple. One of the first things you learn as a race car driver is wherever you focus is where you're going to go. He said, I knew I didn't want to hit the wall. I wanted to get back on the track. So even though my car was headed toward the wall, I turned my face toward the track. And while the car was moving this way, I was looking that way because I knew wherever I could focus was where I would end up going. So by focusing on the track, I was able to get back on the track. Do I need to tell you what that story really means? See, whatever you focus on will expand. If you focus on your fears will be bigger. If you focus on your courage will outweigh your fears. And then quick fact number 5. Quick fact about courage number 5. Courage is not something you store up. Courage is something you use up. I'll say that again. I think it bears repeating. Courage is not something you store up. Courage is something you use up. You see, courage requires ongoing action. Courage is not a one-time deal. So, you act, and then you remind yourself of your foundation, which gives you the wherewithal to act again, and then you act, and then you remind yourself of your foundational principles, and then you act again, and then on and on and on. You consciously make the choice. It's not something you store up. Courage is something you use up. Courage is an action word. Okay, you've got to use it regularly. Everybody have those 5 quick facts about courage? Okay, those are those 5 quick facts about courage. Shout them back out to me again. Quick fact number 1. Shout it out to me. Quick fact number 1. There you go. Courage is a choice. Quick fact number 2. Principles and values are the foundations of courage. Quick fact number 3. There you go. Courage is not the absence of fear. Come on, give me quick fact number 4. What we focus upon expands. And quick fact number 5. You got it. Courage is not something you store up. Courage is something you use up. Now let's talk about 5 practical ways to face your fears. You're going to discover, you're going to be given, you're going to get 5 practical ways. And I want you to underscore the word practical. This is not theory. This is practical. In fact, I'm going to give you some practical exercises. I'm going to give you some homework assignments that I urge you to do. See, I have you for one day. I have you for about half an hour. Then I have you for about 4 hours on Wednesday. I've only got you for a day, okay? You've got to take these principles. You've got to take these principles and remind yourself of it. Some of you already know this, okay? Anytime you're trying to learn something new, it takes about 21 days of continued practice or rehearsal to master it, okay? So over the next 3 weeks, I want you to come back to your notes here. Come back to this video if you need to, and review 5 practical ways to face your fears. I'm going to give you some practical exercises. I'm going to give you some homework. Everybody ready? 5 practical ways to face your fear. Number 1, please write this down. Admit your fears. Admit your fears. My grandfather used to say this to me, and I've carried it with me all these years. You cannot fix what you will not face. I'll say that again. You cannot fix what you will not face. You have to admit your fear. So here's the first practical exercise to help you get beyond your fear. As simple as this may sound, here's the first practical exercise. I want you to write down your fears about COVID-19. Write down all of your fears about this coronavirus. And some of us will have a long list. Some of us may not have a long list at all. Some of us may not have a list at all. But whatever, I want you to write down your fears, whatever they may be. What fears do you have about coronavirus? And specifically, what fears do you have about how coronavirus will impact this school year? Write down any fears that you have and this school, and any fears that you may have during this school year, and you'll get a better perspective on your fears. Listen, by writing your fears down, please hear me. By writing your fears down, you are also fully acknowledging that your fears exist. See, pretending that your fears do not exist is not a way of getting beyond your fears. Write them down. By writing them down, you're acknowledging they exist. And by acknowledging they exist, this leads to awareness. And awareness is the first step and 95% of your journey. So your first practical exercise under this first tactic for dealing with fear is write your fears down. Now here's your second practical exercise. We're still under the first way to face your fear, which is admit your fears. Okay, we're still under number 1, which is admit your fears. Here's the second exercise under number 1. I want you to read. I want you to start reading. Read up about other people who have found courage in the midst of dire circumstances. Read about other people who have found meaning, other people who have found their purpose in the midst of dire circumstances. For example, you might want to read about someone who was severely crippled physically and yet managed to achieve an Olympic gold medal, like Wilma Rudolph. Or you might want to read about somebody who was unjustly imprisoned for fighting against the racism and the violence in his own country, and then later became president of that same country upon his release from prison, like Nelson Mandela. Or you might want to read about a baby who was blinded, lost his eyesight, a baby who lost his eyesight because of a mistake his pediatric nurse made shortly after he was born. And yet, despite his blindness, he grew up to become one of the world's most celebrated entertainers with more Grammy Awards and more #1 hits than any other living artist. And that dude's name is Stevie Wonder. Are you starting to see a pattern here? Okay. What this really means is I want you to find stories of people who have faced impossible odds and read those stories. Because by reading those stories, you'll be reminding yourself, hey, if Stevie Wonder can do it, and he was blinded, if Nelson Mandela can do it, and he was imprisoned, if Wilma Rudolph can run track and get a gold medal when she suffered from polio and couldn't walk when she was a kid, if they can do it, so can I. Find yourself some stories and read those stories for inspiration. Those are your practical exercises under this first way to get rid of your fear, which is admit your fear. Everybody ready for number 2? Number 1 is admit your fears, but number 2 is accept fear as the price of progress. Accept fear as the price of progress. Listen to me closely. As long as you continue to push out into this world, as long as you continue to stretch your capabilities, as long as you continue to take risks in making your dreams come true, you are going to experience fear. To do anything of value, please hear me, to do anything of value, we have to take risks. And with risk comes fear. If we accept fear as the price of progress, then we can take appropriate risks that will yield great reward. Listen to me. The price of progress for this school year is fear. No fear, no progress. No fear, no progress. In other words, I want you to flip the script and see fear as your partner this school year. Now that may sound silly, but I want you to repeat after me. Here's your first practical exercise under this second point. Ready for your practical exercise? I want everybody to repeat after me. Please shout it like you mean it. Fear is my friend. Go for it. Say it again. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I want you to do it again. Trust me on this. Say it. Fear is my friend. You may feel silly saying that, but fear can help you if you allow it to help you. For example, I'll give you a practical example. I'll give you a personal example. My fear of COVID-19, my fear of coronavirus has kept me healthy. Because I'm afraid of coronavirus, I don't step out of this house without a mask. Because I'm afraid of coronavirus, I wash my hands regularly. Because I'm afraid of coronavirus, I practice social distancing. All of the above. It's my fear that's keeping me healthy. Other people have gotten it. Other people have gotten sick. My fear of it has caused me to make some great decisions. Think about it. Throughout your life, some of the things that kept you from doing some stupid things was fear. Think about it. Think about some things that you could have done when you were younger that you didn't do because you were afraid to do them. I know I had the types of parents, and I grew up in church. I'm not trying to proselytize anybody, but I grew up in church. Church was my extended family, and all of those adults in church knew me, and I knew that if I did something wrong, word would get out at St. John Baptist Church, and all of those people at St. John would get all over my case on Sunday morning. See, the fact that I was afraid of getting caught kept me from doing some stupid things. Think about it. Fear is really your friend. If you allow fear to keep you from making silly decisions, fear can be your ally. Flip the script. Okay? Point number 3. Point number 3 when it comes to fear. Here's the third one. Practice positive self-talk. Practice positive self-talk. Positive self-talk. Aristotle, my favorite philosopher, Aristotle once said, fear is pain arising from the anticipation of evil. Aristotle said, fear is pain arising from the anticipation of evil. That goes hand in hand with the point we just made. In other words, we have a tendency to experience whatever we expect. We have a tendency to experience whatever we expect. I am a firm believer that if you expect the best is coming your way. I am also a firm believer that if you expect the worst is coming your way. The human being, the human brain, rather, is a powerful tool. The human brain has the ability to push you toward what you think, push you toward what you expect. Psychologists call this the self-fulfilling prophecy. I know many of you remember that from your introduction to psychology course when you were in college. Psychologists call this the self-fulfilling prophecy. Whatever you hear said over and over and over again, whatever you tell yourself over and over again, whatever you hear from the outside world over and over again, has a tendency to become your reality. Somebody said it this way: faith comes by hearing. What that means is, if I hear something over and over and over again, I begin to believe it. For example, some of our children in Dinuba hear over and over again, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're whatever, fill in the blank. They hear that at home. They hear it from the people who should be protecting them. They hear it from family members. They hear it from siblings, whatever the case may be. Some of our children in Dinuba hear negative, nasty things about themselves over and over again. And watch this. As a result of that, they come to school with that script, that recording playing in their head over and over again. And they need you to counteract that script. We have to counter the negative talk with positive talk. Instead of saying it's a problem, why not say this? It's an opportunity. Instead of saying life is a struggle, how about saying this? Life is an adventure. Instead of saying I hope, how about saying I know? Instead of saying if only, how about saying this? Next time. Instead of saying, what will I do? How about saying, I know I can handle this? Instead of saying, it's terrible, how about saying, it's a learning experience? I've been told that in the Chinese language, the character for problem and opportunity are the exact same character. In the Chinese language, I've been told, problem and opportunity are the same word. That's what that's all about. It's all about reframing. Let me give you some practical exercises with this one, because this third point is practicing positive talk. So let me give you some practical exercises so that you can practice some positive talk. Everybody ready? Practical exercises. We're still under number 3 for getting over fear. Here's practical exercise number 1. Here's your homework. I want you to begin surrounding yourself with people who are practicing this same discipline. Find friends and colleagues who have watched this video just like you and hold each other accountable. Somebody once said, iron sharpens iron. So the first practical exercise is I want you to find somebody, surround yourself with people who are practicing this same discipline of positive self-talk. You cannot afford to be around people who are negative. There's too much at stake in this school year. I know some people who are so negative, they can walk into a dark room and begin to develop. You've got to avoid those people. So first practical exercise, surround yourself with people who are practicing positive self-talk. Find a positivity buddy. Here's another practical exercise. Find a positivity buddy who will hold you accountable and call you out whenever they hear you start speaking fear and negativity. Find somebody and tell them, you know what? If you ever hear me talking negatively or hear me spouting my fears, I want you to call me on it immediately. Say something to me. All right, Derek, stop. You're being negative again. Stop it. How can you reframe this? Here's your third practical exercise. Third practical exercise. We're still under this third point of practicing a positive self-talk. Third practical exercise. I want you to pick a special affirmation each day, a special affirmation each day, and write it somewhere where you'll see it regularly, okay? And I want you to say it to yourself at least 10 times each time you see it. Pick a special affirmation. I'll give you an example. My affirmation, and I've been saying this is no joke. I have been saying this to myself every day since I was 16 years old. Here's the one that I say to myself every day when I wake up in the morning. I do not have a spirit of fear. I have a spirit of power. I do not have a spirit of fear. I have a spirit of power. I do not have a spirit of fear. I have a spirit of power. I say that to myself every day. And you know what? Every day over the years, saying that to myself, I've started to believe it. I believe it wholeheartedly now. And whatever comes my way, it may be tough, but I know I can handle it. You know why? Because what is inside me is not a spirit of fear. What's inside me is a spirit of power. Now, you need to find one for yourself, or feel free to use mine. The one that I just gave you, it works. It works for me. If it works for you, use it. Find your own, but find a special affirmation and say it to yourself at least 10 times daily. Everybody have that one? Step number 4 to getting over your fears and moving past your fears. Become your own pen pal. Become your own pen pal. Now, this one is filled with practical exercises. This one is filled with practical exercises. Here's practical exercise number 1. I want you to write down all of the positive and negative ways you could feel and act about any situation. Write down every positive and negative reaction that you could have. Write down all the positive reactions you could have. Write down all the negative reactions you could have, okay? And then I want you to go through each one of them, and I want you to consciously choose the positive responses, since we said courage is a choice. For example, for those of you who are classroom teachers, this is just an example for those of you who are classroom teachers. For those of you who are classroom teachers, I want you to imagine that you are about to teach an online lesson and you're worried that it's going to be a flop. Then I want you to imagine that you're about to teach an online lesson and you're certain that it's going to be a rousing success. Picture both scenarios. Picture I'm about to teach a class online and it's going to fall apart. Then picture yourself, I'm about to teach a class online and it's going to go smoothly. And then I want you to consciously choose the latter thought. Okay, here's another practical one. Write down as soon as possible all of the good things that have happened as a result of COVID-19. I know that sounds weird, but in the midst of all the negativity, there are some good things that have happened as a result of COVID-19. I was teaching a webinar not too long ago about fear, actually, and I asked the people that question. I said, can you give me some good things about COVID-19? Can you give me the good part about COVID-19? And hands started flying up all over this webinar. One person said, you know what? My wife and I, my spouse and I have spent more time together and we've fallen in love all over again. Somebody said, you know what? Negative thing about COVID-19 is that I've been able to go online and take some classes and get some certification. They started naming all these positive things. In the midst of every negative situation, there is always something positive. You just have to look for it. I want you to consciously look for it and focus on it. Okay? And finally, fifth key to getting past fear, and we're done. Final key to getting past fear, and this is the big one. Remind yourself of your big why. Remind yourself of your big why. Sometimes, your big why, W-H-Y. Sometimes the best way to fight fear is to focus on your reason for confronting it. Is your goal bigger than your fear? For example, firefighters run into a burning building not because they are fearless. Firefighters run into a burning building because they have a calling that is more important than their fear, and their calling is, I rescue lives. Here's another example. My good friend Sheila, all of her life, she has been afraid of flying, afraid of getting on an airplane. But last year, she decided to confront her fear, not because the fear had vanished. She decided to confront her fear because a meeting with her new grandchild awaited her at the end of the flight. She was scared to death of flying, but she had a new grandbaby and she wanted to see her new grandbaby. So in spite of that fear, she got on that plane because seeing her new grandbaby was bigger than her fear. See, now this is not one that I can give to you. You have to supply your own why. But you can do this. What's your big why? What's your big motivation? Her name was Mrs. K, Ruth K, K-A-Y, and she was my 5th grade teacher. When I was a 5th grader, I discovered that public school teachers in the city of Little Rock did not get paid a whole lot of money. Now, I was kind of radical and militant even when I was a kid. So when I found out just how little school teachers got paid, I was angry. I went to my 5th grade teacher and I said, Mrs. K, it's not fair. You're here before school starts. You stay with us after school starts. You go above and beyond. You're the best teacher I've ever had. And they don't pay you anything. You get paid peanuts. Why are you still teaching when they don't pay you enough? And I will never forget her answer when I asked her what her why was. Mrs. K said, baby. Now, this is down south in the 80s. You can't get away with calling people baby these days. But down south in Arkansas, everybody called everybody baby and sweetheart. Mrs. K said to me, baby, do you remember when you were crying because you couldn't figure out how to do fractions? I said, oh yeah, I remember that. I hated doing fractions and I would cry because I was just bad at math. She said, I remember it too. Do you remember when you finally figured out how to do fractions? I said, yeah, I do. She said, do you remember the look on your face? Do you remember the way you looked at me once you finally figured out how to do fractions? I said, yes, Mrs. K, I do. She said, baby, that look is the reason why I teach. I can't give this one to you, folks. You have to find your own why. Find your own why. I close our time together with a quote from my favorite hero, one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela years ago said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave person is not the one who does not feel afraid. The brave person is the one who conquers that fear. Your song is You Can Do This. Have a great school year, and I expect some success stories. Call me, email me. I expect some success stories from you all. Thank you so much.